The contact appeared during the third watch cycle, and Lieutenant Cale Varys laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. The holographic tactical display hanging above the command deck of the Dominion battle carrier Iron Judgment showed a single red marker drifting through the outer edge of Sector 9. One vessel. No escorts. No fleet signature. No active military transponder. Just one ship. Commander Terran Holt glanced at the display and raised an eyebrow. That's what interrupted my briefing? Cale shrugged. The sensor station flagged it as unusual. Why? The registry code. That finally earned Holt's attention. The bridge crew looked up from their stations. Explain. Cale expanded the contact file. A weathered identification profile rotated above the tactical table. For a moment nobody said anything. Then several officers exchanged confused looks. One of them chuckled. Another started laughing. Within seconds the entire command deck was grinning. Because the registry was impossible. The vessel identified itself as TCN Sentinel Dawn. Age of registry. 124 years. Operational status. Decommissioned. Last recorded location. Terran Salvage Yard 14. Threat classification. Inactive relic. The laughter spread. Commander Holt leaned back in his chair. A museum piece? Apparently. 124 years old? According to the archive. One officer wiped tears from his eyes. Maybe they're towing it to a scrapyard. Another shook his head. Terrans always were sentimental. The Dominion had spent 3 centuries expanding through neighboring systems. They had conquered empires, broken coalitions, destroyed fleets numbering in the thousands. Against that history, a century-old Terran relic wasn't a threat. It wasn't even interesting. Commander Holt tapped the armrest. Send a patrol wing. A patrol wing? Let's identify it properly and update the archive. The bridge relaxed immediately. Routine task. Routine report. Routine morning. Outside the carrier's armored hull, hundreds of warships maintained formation around the flagship. The Dominion 3rd Expeditionary Fleet represented the largest concentration of military power in the sector. 9,000 combat vessels. 40 years without a defeat. No civilization within 600 light-years possessed enough strength to challenge them. Everyone on the bridge knew it. That certainty hung in the air like gravity itself. Cale opened the archive entry. Something caught his attention. A small notation near the bottom. The file had not been updated in 72 years. He frowned. That's odd. Commander Holt looked over. What? The archive entry. What about it? It was never closed properly. So? Cale hesitated. The notation wasn't alarming. Just unusual. Most military archives received routine maintenance. This one simply stopped. No destruction report. No salvage confirmation. No final inspection. Just silence. 72 years of silence. He almost mentioned it. Then he shook his head. What difference could it possibly make? The ship was ancient. The archive was old. Administrative mistakes happened all the time. The patrol wing launched 6 minutes later. 200 interceptors accelerated toward the contact. The bridge barely paid attention. Conversations resumed. Reports continued. The morning carried on. 23 minutes later, the sensor officer stopped breathing for a moment. His console flashed amber. Then red. The officer stared. Checked the numbers. Reset the scan. Ran it again. The numbers remained exactly the same. Slowly he looked up. Commander? Holt didn't even turn around. What is it? The officer swallowed. I think our sensors are malfunctioning. That got the bridge's attention. What kind of malfunction? The officer stared at the display. His voice sounded strangely small. The contact's reactor output. What about it? It doesn't match the archive. Holt sighed. How far off? The officer zoomed in. The bridge fell silent. Then completely silent. Because the reactor signature being produced by the supposedly decommissioned relic was not the output of a century-old vessel. It wasn't even close. It matched the power generation profile of an active supercapital warship. No one laughed now. The officer looked at the impossible reading. Then at the ancient registry floating above it. Then back to the numbers. Commander. What? The officer's voice barely emerged as a whisper. I don't think that's a relic. For the first 12 minutes after the discovery, nobody used the word danger. That is important. Looking back now, after everything that happened, people always assumed there must have been a moment when the bridge crew understood the truth. There wasn't. There were only numbers. And numbers are deceptive things. The sensor officer reran the scan 3 times. Then 5. Then 7. Every result returned identical. The reactor signature remained unchanged. Commander Holt stood from his chair and walked to the tactical display. Show me. The officer enlarged the readings. Energy output estimates floated across the holographic screen. The bridge grew quiet. Not frightened. Confused. The ancient vessel's power generation exceeded every figure listed in the Dominion archive. Not by a small margin. Not by 10%. By nearly 400%. Holt stared at the numbers. Then at the registry file. Then back to the numbers. That's impossible. Yes, Commander. Calibration error? No. Sensor interference? No. The officer hesitated. I already checked. A silence settled over the bridge. Not the silence of fear. The silence of professionals encountering information that refused to fit. Commander Holt folded his arms. Explain it. The sensor officer looked uncomfortable. I can't. The honesty of the answer made several officers glance toward him. Military officers dislike uncertainty. Dominion officers especially. The Dominion had built its power on certainty. Every threat classified. Every enemy measured. Every outcome calculated. Yet here sat a reactor profile that should not exist. Maybe the Terrans rebuilt it, someone suggested. Another officer nodded. Modernized systems. Upgraded reactor. Experimental retrofit. The theories came quickly. All reasonable. All comforting. Commander Holt accepted the explanation immediately. That makes sense. It did. At least on the surface. Ancient hull. Modern components. Mystery solved. The bridge relaxed. For approximately 43 seconds. Then another alarm sounded. This time from the long-range imaging station. The technician frowned. Commander. Holt sighed. What now? I have visual confirmation. Good. The technician didn't answer. Holt looked up. The man's face had lost all color. Problem? The technician slowly rotated his monitor. The image appeared above the tactical display. Several officers instinctively leaned forward. Nobody spoke. The ship filled the hologram. Long. Dark. Scarred. Very old. The hull plating showed the wear of decades. Deep impact marks crossed the forward sections. Layered repair scars stretched across entire structural segments. Sections of armor carried damage patterns older than some civilizations. Yet somehow, the vessel looked alive. Every observation port glowed. Every sensor array operated at full power. Every external system showed active status. The ship did not resemble a relic. It resembled a predator. One that had simply grown old. Commander Holt studied the image. A strange feeling touched the back of his mind. Something about the vessel felt wrong. Not threatening. Wrong. Like reading a historical document that suddenly changes language halfway through. The ship's structure belonged to another century. Its systems belonged to today. Its condition suggested constant use. Not storage. Not preservation. Is heavy use. A junior officer finally spoke. That's impossible. No one disagreed. The damage marks alone should have retired the vessel decades ago. Instead they had been repaired. Then damaged again. Then repaired again. The pattern repeated across the hull. Again. And again. And again. As though the ship had spent decades fighting wars nobody knew about. The thought arrived simultaneously in several minds. Nobody said it aloud. Commander Holt turned away. Status of the patrol wing? The tactical officer checked. Intercept in 7 minutes. Good. Routine. Everything remained routine. One strange ship. One strange reactor. Nothing more. Then the communications officer looked up sharply. Commander. Holt's patience was beginning to wear thin. What? The vessel just transmitted. The bridge froze. Message? No. What then? The officer swallowed. A fleet recognition code. Holt frowned. For who? The officer enlarged the transmission. The answer appeared across the display. Several officers stared. Then reread it. Then reread it again. Because the recognition code identified the vessel as an active combat asset of the Terran Navy. Not retired. Not archived. Not decommissioned. Active. Commander Holt slowly looked toward the image of the ancient warship. The reactor. The scars. The repairs. The active systems. For the first time all morning, certainty began to crack. A single thought entered his mind. If the archive was wrong about the ship's status, What else was it wrong about? Before anyone could answer, the tactical officer suddenly stood. His voice trembled. Commander. Holt turned. What now? The officer stared at the incoming report from the patrol wing. His expression had become something very close to disbelief. The interceptors have visual contact. Good. The officer looked up. They're requesting immediate reinforcement. The bridge went silent. 200 Dominion interceptors did not request reinforcement. Not against a single ship. Not ever. The first interceptor vanished 32 seconds after entering engagement range. Not exploded. Not damaged. Vanished. On the tactical display, its marker simply changed status. Active. Inactive. Gone. The bridge crew stared at the screen. Commander Holt frowned. Equipment failure? The tactical officer checked. No distress signal. Drive malfunction? No emergency beacon. The commander shrugged. Log it and continue. One interceptor lost during a deployment of 200 was statistically irrelevant. The patrol wing commander continued the approach. The formation tightened around the unknown vessel. Weapons armed. Target locks established. The ancient ship remained on course. No evasive maneuvers. No acceleration. No hostile transmissions. It simply continued drifting through the sector as if 200 armed warships were not surrounding it. 38 seconds later, a second interceptor disappeared. This time the bridge noticed. The tactical officer straightened. Second loss. Commander Holt looked up. Cause? Unknown. The answer irritated him. Military systems always produced causes. Mechanical failure. Power cascade. Reactor breach. Collision. There was always a reason. This time there wasn't. 43 seconds. Third interceptor gone. 49 seconds. Fourth. 54 seconds. 6. The bridge fell silent. The patrol wing commander finally transmitted. His voice sounded strained. Iron judgment, we are experiencing unexplained contact losses. Commander Holt stepped toward the channel. Clarify. Pause. Then. We cannot. The patrol commander sounded confused. Almost embarrassed. As near as we can determine, vessels are simply ceasing transmission. Enemy fire? We're not detecting any. The bridge exchanged looks. No visible weapons. No missile signatures. No energy discharge. Nothing. Yet ships kept disappearing. Commander Holt turned toward sensors. Visual feed. The hologram shifted. The unknown vessel filled the display. For several seconds nobody understood what they were seeing. Then the sensor officer whispered. It's moving. The ship had changed position. Not dramatically. Not enough to trigger alarms. Just enough. A subtle lateral movement. A smooth adjustment. Almost graceful. Commander Holt narrowed his eyes. That wasn't possible. The vessel was enormous. Ancient. A hull of that size should maneuver like a continent. Instead it moved with effortless precision. Like a fighter craft. The patrol commander shouted across the channel. Target changing vectors. The interceptor formation adjusted. The unknown ship adjusted again. Another interceptor vanished. Then 2 more. Then 4. The tactical display began changing faster. Commander Holt walked toward the screen. His heartbeat had started increasing. Not from fear. From disbelief. Current losses? The officer checked. 14. The commander blinked. How long? 2 minutes. The bridge became very quiet. 14 interceptors. Gone. Against 1 ship. 1. That number refused to make sense. Another transmission arrived. This one from a pilot. Not a commander. A pilot. His voice was shaking. Iron judgment, we're taking fire. Commander Holt seized the channel. Source. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? The pilot hesitated. Then answered with a sentence that would remain burned into the memories of everyone on the bridge. I never see it coming. Silence. The pilot continued. Ships are disappearing around me. 1 second they're there. The next they're gone. Another pause. Then. It's targeting us before we even reposition. Commander Holt felt something cold settle in his chest. For the first time that morning, he considered the possibility that the situation was not under control. The tactical officer suddenly stood. Commander. What? Losses are accelerating. The display updated. The numbers climbed faster. The unknown vessel continued moving. Rolling. Turning. Adjusting. Each maneuver seemed insignificant. Yet every movement was followed by more disappearing interceptors. As though the ship already knew where every target would be. As though it had solved the battle before it happened. The patrol formation began to break apart. Pilots abandoned standard doctrine. Units scattered. Some accelerated. Others attempted retreat. The results changed nothing. The losses continued. 39 ships. 47. 52. Commander Holt stared. His certainty was gone now. Completely gone. The archive was wrong. The reactor profile was wrong. The status classification was wrong. Everything was wrong. And the realization arrived too late. A communication alert sounded. Priority channel. Patrol Wing Command. The bridge instantly opened it. The patrol commander appeared on the screen. His face was pale. His eyes locked onto Holt. For 3 seconds he said nothing. Then he spoke. Commander. What is it? The patrol commander swallowed. Behind him, warning lights flashed across his bridge. His answer came quietly. Almost respectfully. I don't think we're fighting a ship. The transmission cut out. His interceptor vanished from the tactical display. At exactly the same moment, the loss counter reached 73. 73 ships. Destroyed in less than 5 minutes. The ancient vessel continued moving through the sector. Unhurried. Unconcerned. Almost indifferent. Then the sensor officer looked up from his console. The color had drained completely from his face. Commander. Holt turned. The officer's voice barely emerged. The vessel just transmitted another identification code. What code? The officer stared at the screen. Then slowly answered. Combat Readiness Designation. Pause. The bridge waited. What designation? The officer swallowed. Patrol Unit 1. No one spoke. Because if this ship was only a patrol vessel, then what exactly did the Terrans send to war? The recall order went out immediately. Every surviving interceptor received the same command. Withdraw. Retreat. Return to formation. For the first time in the history of the Dominion 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, a patrol engagement had become a fleet-level concern. Commander Holt stood motionless at the tactical display. The loss counter had stabilized at 78. Not because the enemy had stopped. Because the surviving pilots had finally escaped engagement range. The ancient vessel did not pursue. That disturbed Holt more than the losses. Predators pursued. Victors exploited weakness. This ship simply continued moving through the sector as though the battle had never happened. As though 78 warships were an administrative detail. Open every archive we have on that vessel. The order snapped through the bridge. Archive officers immediately began searching. Military records. Historical records. Intelligence records. Trade records. Salvage records. Anything connected to the ship. Anything connected to the Terrans. Anything connected to the designation. TCN Sentinel Dawn. Minutes passed. Then the first anomaly appeared. Commander. Holt turned. What? The salvage record. What about it? It doesn't exist. Pause. Explain. The archive says the ship entered salvage yard 1472 years ago. Yes. There is no departure record. The bridge became quiet again. No departure record. Not delayed. Not classified. Missing. Gone entirely. Commander Holt folded his arms. Continue. More files appeared. More problems emerged. A logistics officer frowned at his console. Commander. What now? The maintenance records. Holt closed his eyes briefly. What about them? They stop. Stop. Completely. The officer enlarged the timeline. For decades the vessel showed normal activity. Repairs. Inspections. Overhauls. Then suddenly, nothing. 72 years of absolute silence. No reports. No inspections. No decommissioning confirmation. No destruction verification. Nothing. As though the ship had simply disappeared. And yet, it hadn't disappeared. It was right here. Very much alive. Another officer called out. I found something. Everyone turned. What? The officer swallowed. Historical fleet records. Continue. The Sentinel Dawn was not alone. The display changed. A class profile appeared. Ancient. Forgotten. Obsolete. At least according to the archive. The vessel belonged to the Dawn-class heavy cruisers. 12 had originally been built. 11 officially listed as destroyed, retired, or scrapped. 1 listed as decommissioned. Sentinel Dawn. The ship currently drifting through Sector 9. Commander Holt studied the file. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Then he saw it. Wait. The bridge looked toward him. Show me the destruction confirmations. The archive officer complied. One by one the records appeared. Destroyed. 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 Retired. Scrap. Destroyed. 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 Holt's eyes narrowed. These confirmations. What about them? They're old. The officer checked. Then checked again. A strange expression crossed his face. Commander. Yes. The newest confirmation is 69 years old. Nobody spoke. Holt felt a chill crawl slowly down his spine. Every ship in the class had supposedly disappeared decades ago. Every record ended within the same 3-year period. Every investigation stopped. Every confirmation ceased. The entire class vanished from military observation at exactly the same time. As though someone had deliberately closed the books. The realization spread across the bridge. Nobody wanted to say it aloud. Finally the censor officer did. What if they weren't scrapped? Silence. No one answered. Because everyone had arrived at the same conclusion. The records had not been updated because there had been nothing to update. The ships were never destroyed. The archives simply stopped watching. A communications technician suddenly raised his hand. I found an external reference. Commander Holt turned sharply. Show me. The technician enlarged an old intelligence report. Most of the document had been forgotten. Buried beneath decades of newer data. One paragraph remained highlighted. The report had been written 70 years earlier by a long-retired Dominion observer. The bridge read the final sentence together. No one breathed. Terran Naval Command has redirected multiple decommissioned warships toward undisclosed deep space sectors. Purpose unknown. Observation terminated due to budget reassignment. The room went completely silent. Budget reassignment. A forgotten report. A closed archive. 70 years. Commander Holt stared at the sentence. Then at the tactical display. Then at the image of the Sentinel Dawn. The scars across its hull suddenly made sense. The repairs. The reactor. The impossible maneuverability. The combat efficiency. The ship had not spent 70 years in storage. It had spent 70 years doing something. Something violent. Something dangerous. Something the Dominion never noticed. A sensor alarm interrupted the silence. Every head turned instantly. The tactical officer's face had gone pale. Commander. Holt's voice sounded different now. Tighter. What is it? The officer pointed at the display. A new contact had appeared. Then another. Then another. 3 distant signatures emerging from deep space. All moving toward Sector 9. All carrying the same identification pattern. The same ancient registry architecture. The same impossible power output. The same combat classification. Patrol unit. The bridge stared. Commander Holt felt the certainty of his entire career begin to collapse. Because the ship that had just destroyed 78 Dominion warships wasn't unique. And according to the sensors, it had friends. Nobody spoke for nearly 20 seconds. 3 additional contacts. 3. Not fleets. Not battle groups. Not carrier formations. Ships. Single ships. Each carrying the same impossible power signature as the Sentinel Dawn. Each moving with steady purpose toward Sector 9. Commander Holt felt something unfamiliar creeping through the bridge. Not panic. Not yet. But something close. The tactical display no longer looked like a routine military operation. It looked like a mistake. A very large mistake. Distance. The sensor officer answered immediately. Approximately 14 light minutes. Time to arrival? 47 minutes. The bridge remained silent. 47 minutes. That was enough time for the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet to fully assemble. Enough time for 9,000 warships to deploy into combat formation. Enough time to erase any single threat. At least that was what Doctrine said. Commander Holt stared at the display. Doctrine suddenly felt less reliable than it had an hour ago. Open a communication channel. Several officers looked up in surprise. The order itself wasn't unusual. The timing was. Dominion fleets did not negotiate from positions of strength. They issued demands. Yet nobody questioned the command. Not after 78 vanished warships. The communications officer nodded. Channel opening. The bridge waited. Seconds passed. Nothing. Then the speakers activated. A calm female voice filled the command deck. Clear. Professional. Unhurried. This is Captain Elena Ward of the Terran patrol vessel Sentinel Dawn. Your signal has been received. The bridge exchanged glances. No static. No encryption delays. No confusion. The Terran captain sounded like someone answering a routine service call. Commander Holt stepped forward. "This is Commander Terran Holt of the Dominion 3rd Expeditionary Fleet." "Understood." The response came instantly. No hesitation. No concern. No intimidation. Just acknowledgement. Holt suddenly became aware of how many officers were listening. Thousands of lives depended on the next few minutes. "We request clarification regarding the destruction of our patrol wing." A brief pause. Then, the destruction was avoidable. The bridge froze. Not because of the words. Because of the tone. Captain Ward sounded neither defensive nor threatening. She sounded factual. As though discussing weather conditions. Commander Holt felt irritation rise. 78 Dominion warships were destroyed. Yes. The answer arrived immediately. No denial. No excuse. No apology. Just certainty. The simplicity of it unsettled everyone. Holt folded his arms. "Do you consider that acceptable?" Another pause. When Ward spoke again, her voice remained perfectly calm. "No." The bridge blinked. Commander Holt stared. That wasn't the answer he expected. Captain Ward continued. "Loss of life is never acceptable when alternatives exist." The command deck became very quiet. The sentence felt strange. Wrong somehow. Military officers did not speak like that. Not during active operations. Not after winning a battle. Holt glanced toward the tactical display. The three approaching contacts continued closing distance. Steady. Patient. Unhurried. The Terran captain spoke again. "Commander Holt." "Yes." "I would like to prevent further casualties." The bridge remained motionless. Nobody even pretended to work anymore. Every officer listened. Every station monitored the conversation. Every eye fixed on the speakers. Holt answered carefully. "Explain." "Your patrol wing attacked my vessel. Based on incorrect intelligence." "I am aware." The answer came so quickly that it startled him. "You are. Your archives are outdated." Silence. Captain Ward continued. "The Sentinel Dawn has been operational for 72 years beyond your last recorded update." Holt felt his stomach tighten. She knew. She knew exactly what the Dominion records contained. Exactly where they ended. Exactly how blind they had been. The realization sent a chill across the bridge. Captain Ward's voice remained calm. "We understand why the mistake occurred." Commander Holt looked toward the tactical display. The approaching Terran contacts continued their steady advance. For ships now. Only 4. Against 9,000 Dominion warships. The number should have been ridiculous. Yet somehow they weren't. Not anymore. Then Captain Ward said the sentence that every officer would remember for the rest of their lives. "Commander Holt, I am offering you an opportunity." The bridge became perfectly silent. Holt slowly answered. "What opportunity?" "Withdraw your fleet." No threats. No dramatic speeches. No ultimatums. Just 4 words. "Withdraw your fleet." Commander Holt almost laughed. Almost. 9,000 warships. Against 4 vessels. The mathematics still seemed absurd. And yet 78 ships were already gone. The certainty that once filled the bridge no longer existed. Captain Ward continued. "I want to be completely clear." Her voice never changed. Never rose. Never hardened. That somehow made it worse. "If your fleet withdraws, this matter ends immediately." The bridge held its breath. "And if we don't?" Holt asked. The answer came instantly. Without emotion. Without anger. Without hesitation. "Then the next several hours will be extremely unfortunate." A long silence followed. Then Captain Ward added one final sentence. A sentence delivered with such quiet sincerity that it frightened everyone who heard it. "I am making this offer once because the offer matters." The channel closed. No farewell. No threat. No warning sirens. Just silence. Commander Holt stared at the dark speaker panel. Then at the tactical display. Then at the approaching Terran ships. The tactical officer suddenly looked up. His face had become pale. "Commander." Holt turned. "What now?" The officer swallowed. "The fleet has completed assembly." 9,000 warships now filled the tactical display. The largest military force in the sector. Ready for battle. Waiting for orders. And for the first time in his career, Commander Holt wasn't certain what those orders should be. Commander Holt stood alone at the center of the bridge. Around him, 9,000 warships waited. The tactical display stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with countless points of light. Every point represented a vessel. Every vessel represented hundreds or thousands of lives. Every life depended on the next decision. And yet the decision felt impossible. Not because the answer was unclear. Because it was. The bridge remained silent. No officer wanted to speak first. No one wanted responsibility for what happened next. Finally, Fleet Tactical Officer Renick broke the silence. "Commander." Holt turned. "Yes. We should engage." The words sounded stronger than the officer looked. Several heads nodded. Others remained silent. No one openly disagreed. The logic was obvious. For ships. 9,000 warships. Even after everything that had happened, those numbers carried weight. Numbers always carried weight. For generations, the Dominion had trusted numbers. Fleet size. Industrial output. Firepower calculations. Statistical superiority. The Dominion didn't simply believe in numbers. It worshipped them. Commander Holt looked at the tactical display. 9,000 vessels. The largest military concentration within 3 sectors. A force capable of conquering civilizations. A force capable of crushing coalitions. A force that had never known defeat. And on the opposite side? 4 ships. Just 4. The math felt absurd. It had to mean something. Didn't it? The communications officer finally spoke. Captain Ward offered withdrawal. A few officers exchanged glances. No one answered. Because nobody liked the implication. Withdrawal suggested fear. Retreat suggested weakness. Dominion commanders were not trained to retreat. They were trained to win. Commander Holt slowly sat in his command chair. His eyes never left the display. For a moment he imagined giving the order. Withdraw. Leave. Accept the warning. The thought felt wrong. Not tactically. Personally. His entire career had been built on certainty. 41 years of service. 32 campaigns. 0 defeats. The Dominion Academy taught a simple principle. A commander who abandons superior numbers abandons victory. Everything he knew reinforced that belief. Everything except the evidence. The evidence sat directly in front of him. 78 destroyed ships. An impossible vessel. A 72-year intelligence failure. 3 more unknown warships. Evidence. And doctrine. The two no longer agreed. The bridge doors opened. Vice Commander Solis entered. She had spent the previous hour coordinating fleet assembly. One look at the room told her everything. No decision? No. She walked toward the tactical display. Studied it. Studied the 4 Terran contacts. Then turned toward Holt. What are you waiting for? The commander looked at her. For certainty. The answer surprised even him. Solis laughed softly. Not because it was funny. Because it wasn't. You don't have certainty. The bridge grew quiet again. The vice commander pointed toward the display. You have 4 unknown ships sitting inside Dominion territory. She pointed toward the fleet. And 9,000 reasons not to tolerate that. No one argued. Because she was voicing what many already believed. Fear was temporary. Numbers were permanent. Doctrine existed for a reason. Commander Holt closed his eyes briefly. Then opened them. Decision made. Perhaps it had been made long before Captain Ward opened the channel. Perhaps the outcome became inevitable the moment a Dominion commander was asked to retreat from 4 ships. He activated fleet-wide communications. Instantly thousands of channels synchronized. 9,000 vessels listening. Waiting. Trusting. Holt's voice echoed across the fleet. This is Commander Terran Holt. The tactical display brightened. Combat formations activated. Targeting network synchronized. Weapon systems awakened. Every ship prepared for war. The Terran vessels have refused Dominion authority within sovereign territory. Not technically true. But nobody corrected him. All fleet elements are authorized for full combat operations. The bridge remained silent. No cheers. No celebration. Just professionalism. The kind that appears immediately before history changes. The fleet acknowledgement signals began arriving. One after another. Thousands of confirmations. Ready. 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 9,000 times. Commander Holt looked at the nearest Terran contact. The Sentinel Dawn. Ancient. Scarred. Patient. Waiting. Almost as if it already knew what decision had been made. The thought irritated him. He pushed it aside. Fleet status. The tactical officer answered immediately. Combat ready. Formation integrity? 99.8%. Target lock. Established. The Dominion battle formation unfolded across millions of kilometers. Nested attack arcs. Siege divisions. Assault wings. command carriers, logistics support. The largest military machine in the sector reached full operational readiness. Commander Holt inhaled slowly, then gave the order. Advance. Across the void, 9,000 warships surged forward. The Dominion fleet began moving toward the 4 Terran vessels. Toward history. Toward disaster. Toward a battle already lost. Although nobody on the bridge understood that yet. Then a final transmission arrived. Priority channel. Terran origin. Captain Ward. The bridge opened it automatically. Her voice filled the command deck. Exactly as calm as before. Exactly as patient. Exactly as certain. I understand. Nothing else. Just those 2 words. Then the channel closed. The tactical officer suddenly looked down at his console. His face turned white. Commander. Holt felt cold. What is it? The officer stared at the incoming sensor report. Then slowly looked up. All 4 Terran vessels have activated full combat status. Pause. The officer swallowed. They're not moving away. Another pause. Longer this time. They're moving toward us. The battle began at 9:14 Fleet Standard Time. According to every Dominion combat simulation ever created, it should have ended before 9:15. 9,000 warships opened fire simultaneously. The tactical display exploded with light. Missile swarms. Kinetic barrages. Plasma lances. Particle beams. Enough firepower to erase continents. Enough firepower to crack moons. Enough firepower to destroy entire civilizations. All directed toward 4 ships. Commander Holt watched the engagement unfold. For a brief moment, relief returned. Whatever the Sentinel Dawn was, nothing survived that amount of fire. Nothing. The tactical officer began counting impact confirmations. 100 impacts. 300. 700. The numbers climbed rapidly. The bridge relaxed. Of course. The warning had been a bluff. An impressive bluff. A terrifying bluff. But still a bluff. Because reality always won. And reality favored 9,000 warships. Then the sensor officer spoke. His voice sounded strange. Almost confused. Commander. Holt turned. What? The officer stared at his screen. I still have 4 contacts. The bridge froze. What? 4 contacts. The officer checked again. Then again. Then a third time. The answer never changed. 4. Commander Holt felt his stomach tighten. Damage assessment? The sensor officer swallowed. No significant structural degradation. Silence. The tactical display updated. The 4 Terran vessels continued advancing. Unharmed. Not heavily damaged. Not barely surviving. Unharmed. Thousands of weapons impacts. Nothing. The impossible had happened. Again. The Dominion fleet fired a second volley. Then a third. Then a fourth. The void became a storm of destruction. The Terran ships emerged through it unchanged. Steady. Purposeful. Almost indifferent. As though the fleet's attack was merely background noise. Then the Sentinel Dawn fired. The bridge expected devastation. Instead they saw precision. 1 beam. 1 target. 1 Dominion cruiser. Gone. Not damaged. Gone. The tactical display dimmed its marker. Silence. The entire bridge stared. The Sentinel Dawn fired again. Another cruiser vanished. Then another. Then another. No wasted shots. No area bombardment. No dramatic displays of power. Each attack removed exactly 1 target. Commander Holt suddenly understood something. The Terrans weren't trying to destroy the fleet. Not yet. They were solving it. The realization sent ice through his veins. The second Terran vessel opened fire. Then the third. Then the fourth. The losses began accelerating. 5 ships. 10. 20. 40. The Dominion fleet still outnumbered them enormously. Yet something felt wrong. The battle wasn't behaving correctly. The casualty reports made no sense. The Terrans weren't targeting the nearest ships. Or the largest. Or the most dangerous. They were targeting specific ships. Very specific ships. The tactical officer suddenly stood. Commander. What? They hit another command relay. Holt looked at the display. A support vessel vanished. 30 seconds later another followed. Then another. The pattern became obvious. The Terrans were attacking coordination infrastructure. Fleet communication hubs. Targeting relays. Sensor integration nodes. The invisible skeleton holding the fleet together. Not the muscles. Not the armor. The bones. Commander Holt stared. They were dismantling the fleet. piece by piece. Exactly as a surgeon dismantles a machine. The tactical officer's voice trembled. Formation coherence dropping. Current percentage? 94. The answer sounded harmless. Until everyone remembered it had been 99 only minutes earlier. Another relay disappeared. Then another. Then another. The percentage dropped again. 90. 87. 84. The Terrans continued advancing. Still taking almost no visible damage. Still firing with terrifying precision. Still choosing targets that nobody understood until after they were gone. The battle no longer felt like combat. It felt like observation. As though the Dominion fleet had become an experiment. Commander Holt looked at the Sentinel Dawn. The ship moved with impossible grace. Every maneuver seemed small. Every adjustment insignificant. Yet somehow each movement placed it exactly where it needed to be. Exactly when it needed to be there. The fleet fired again. The results changed nothing. Thousands of weapons. Millions of calculations. Countless tons of ordnance. No effect. The tactical display updated. Current losses. Then 134. Then 149. Then 172. The numbers rose faster. And faster. And faster. A communications officer suddenly looked up. His face had gone pale. Commander. Holt already knew he wouldn't like the answer. What? Long-range scan update. The officer enlarged the sensor report. The bridge stared. Then stared harder. Because behind the 4 Terran ships, more contacts had appeared. Far away. Barely visible. Yet unmistakable. Ancient registry signatures. Ancient Terran classifications. Ancient power outputs. More patrol ships. Not 4. Not anymore. Commander Holt felt the certainty of an entire civilization collapsing around him. The sensor officer whispered the number. Nobody wanted to hear it. But everyone did. 12 additional contacts. Silence. The Sentinel Dawn continued advancing. Unhurried. Unstoppable. And for the first time since the battle began, Commander Holt realized a terrible possibility. The 4 ships fighting them might not be the fleet. They might only be the local patrol. At the 40-minute mark, the battle stopped. Looking like a battle. That was the moment Commander Holt finally understood. The Dominion fleet was not losing because the Terrans possessed stronger weapons. It was losing because the Terrans understood the fleet better than the fleet understood itself. The realization arrived too late. Much too late. Current losses? The tactical officer checked. His voice sounded hollow. 483. Nobody reacted. The number should have been shocking. Instead it felt inevitable. Every officer on the bridge had been watching the pattern unfold. The Terrans weren't destroying ships randomly. They were selecting them. Every target served a purpose. Every loss weakened something larger. Every shot removed another piece of the structure holding the fleet together. The Dominion fleet had been designed around coordination. 9,000 vessels could overwhelm any opponent because 9,000 vessels acting together were not 9,000 individual warships. They were a single weapon. The Terrans understood that. So they attacked the connections. The communications grid collapsed first. Relay stations vanished one by one. Signal delays began appearing across the formation. Then targeting synchronization failed. Entire assault groups suddenly found themselves operating on outdated firing solutions. Moments later, navigation coordination began breaking apart. Ships drifted slightly out of position. Formation gaps appeared. Tiny at first. Then larger. Then catastrophic. Commander Holt watched the tactical display degrade. For the first time in his career he was watching doctrine die. Not through defeat. Through irrelevance. The Dominion formation had been perfected across centuries. Every layer supported another. Every ship contributed to a greater whole. Now those layers were being peeled away. One at a time. With terrifying patience. Coherence index? The tactical officer swallowed. 72%. The bridge went silent. 72. 30 minutes earlier it had been nearly perfect. Now entire sections of the fleet were operating independently. The Terrans pressed forward. The 4 lead patrol ships continued firing. Not faster. Not harder. Just steadily. Methodically. As though following a schedule. Behind them, the newly detected contacts grew closer. 16 patrol vessels now. 16 ancient ships moving through the darkness with the confidence of predators entering familiar territory. Commander Holt felt cold. Not fear. Something worse. Recognition. The battle had already ended. The fleet simply hadn't stopped moving yet. A warning alarm sounded. Another command vessel disappeared. Then another. The tactical officer stared at the display. They've shifted priorities. Holt looked up sharply. To what? The officer enlarged the targeting pattern. Every bridge officer immediately saw it. The Terrans were no longer dismantling communication infrastructure. That phase was finished. They had moved on. Now they were targeting logistics, fuel carriers, repair platforms, supply tenders, ammunition ships. The vessels nobody noticed until they were gone. One after another they vanished. Entire fleet sectors immediately reported shortages. Weapon output dropped. Shield regeneration slowed. Emergency reserves activated. Commander Holt watched the reports arrive. The Terrans were stripping away the fleet's ability to continue fighting. Not destroying it. Disabling it. The distinction mattered. Because it revealed intent. Captain Ward had known exactly what would happen. Every step. Every phase. Every outcome. She had offered withdrawal because she already knew the result. The realization struck harder than any weapon. A communications officer suddenly looked up. His face had turned pale. Commander. What now? Fleet-wide morale reports. Holt frowned. What about them? The officer hesitated. Then answered. Crews are asking questions. The commander closed his eyes briefly. What questions? The officer swallowed. The same question. Pause. What question? The officer looked toward the tactical display. Toward the advancing Terran ships. Toward the mounting casualty count. Then answered quietly. Why can't we hurt them? No one spoke. Because nobody had an answer. Not anymore. The casualty counter updated again. The numbers climbed relentlessly. Every increase felt less like combat and more like accounting. The Terrans continued working. That was the only word left for it. Working. Like engineers dismantling obsolete machinery. Like technicians removing damaged components. Like professionals completing routine maintenance. Commander Holt stared at the Sentinel Dawn. The ancient ship moved through the battlefield untouched. Scarred. Weathered. And impossibly alive. Then the tactical officer suddenly stood. The movement was so abrupt that everyone turned. His voice cracked. Commander. Holt's stomach tightened. What? The officer pointed toward the center of the tactical display. The bridge followed his finger. And understood immediately. The Terrans had opened a corridor. Not intentionally. Inevitably. Everything between them and the fleet command section was gone. Destroyed. Disabled. Scattered. The path led directly toward the flagship. Directly toward the Iron Judgment. Directly toward Commander Holt. The tactical officer swallowed. They're coming for us. Silence. Absolute silence. Because everyone on the bridge finally understood what Captain Ward had understood from the beginning. The Dominion fleet had never been the target. It had been the obstacle. And now the obstacle was almost gone. At the exact same moment, a priority transmission arrived. Terran origin. Sentinel Dawn. Captain Ward again. The channel identifier flashed across the bridge. Commander Holt stared at it. His hand felt strangely heavy. Slowly he accepted the transmission. Captain Ward's calm voice filled the command deck. Commander Holt. Pause. Then. Your escape pod should be deployed now. The bridge froze. Every officer stopped breathing. Because she wasn't threatening them. She was warning them. For 3 seconds nobody on the bridge moved. Captain Ward's message lingered in the air. Your escape pods should be deployed now. Not surrender. Not final warning. Not prepare to die. Escape pods. Commander Holt stared at the silent speaker. The statement made no sense. If the Terrans intended to destroy them, why issue a warning? If they intended to show mercy, why continue the battle? Nothing fit. Nothing followed military logic. The tactical display updated again. Losses. The numbers climbed steadily. The Terrans continued advancing. The corridor toward the flagship widened. Every ship that attempted to close it vanished. Commander Holt looked around the bridge. Faces stared back at him. Officers. Crew. People. Not numbers. Not statistics. People. For the first time since the battle began, he stopped thinking like a commander. He started thinking like a human being. General Fleet Transmission. The communications officer nodded. Open. The channel connected instantly. Thousands of surviving vessels listening. Thousands of crews waiting. Commander Holt took a slow breath. Then spoke. All Dominion vessels. The bridge became silent. Deploy escape pods immediately. Several officers closed their eyes. The order felt unreal. Escape pods were not launched during battles. Escape pods were launched after battles. After defeat. After disaster. After hope was gone. Yet nobody questioned the command. Not now. Not anymore. Across the fleet, emergency alarms activated. Pod bays opened. Survival craft launched into space. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. Tiny vessels drifting away from the battlefield. The tactical display filled with them. Small markers spreading across the darkness. Commander Holt watched. Part of him expected the Terrans to target them immediately. Any rational military force would. Enemy personnel remained enemy personnel. That was how warfare worked. At least that was how Dominion warfare worked. The Sentinel Dawn continued firing. Another cruiser vanished. Then another. Then another. Yet the escape pods remained untouched. The tactical officer noticed first. Commander. Holt looked up. What? The pods. What about them? The officer stared at his console. They're tracking them. The bridge froze. Tracking? Every single one. A new sensor layer appeared across the tactical display. Thousands of tiny targeting markers. One attached to every escape pod. The bridge fell silent. Commander Holt felt cold. The Terrans knew exactly where every survivor was. Every pod. Every life. Every drifting craft. The Sentinel Dawn's sensors followed all of them. The other patrol ships did the same. Nothing escaped observation. The realization was horrifying. The Terrans could destroy every survivor whenever they wished. The bridge understood this instantly. No one needed to say it. Captain Ward had complete control. Complete. Absolute. And yet, nothing happened. No weapons fired. No pods vanished. No attacks came. The pods continued drifting safely away. Untouched. Ignored. Protected, almost. The tactical officer suddenly enlarged one of the tracking records. A notation appeared beside the pod. Then another. Then another. Thousands of identical entries. Commander Holt stared. The notation had been translated automatically by the fleet computer. The words were simple. Only 3. Not a threat. The bridge went silent. Every escape pod carried the same designation. Not a threat. The Terrans had separated the survivors from the battle. Separated people from targets. Separated life from war. Commander Holt had never seen doctrine like this. Had never imagined doctrine like this. The Sentinel Dawn continued its advance. The flagship shuddered as another defensive screen collapsed. The end had arrived. Everyone knew it. Yet somehow that was no longer the most important thing. The most important thing was this. The Terrans had the power to kill everyone. And they had chosen not to. The realization struck harder than defeat itself. At that exact moment, the flagship's primary shield failed. Warning alarms exploded across the bridge. Red lights flooded every console. The tactical officer looked up. His face was pale. His voice barely emerged as a whisper. Commander. Holt already knew. The Sentinel Dawn had reached firing position. The battle was over. Now came the judgment. The Iron Judgment survived for another 11 minutes. Commander Holt knew this because he recorded the time himself. 11 minutes. That was how long the largest warship in the Dominion 3rd Expeditionary Fleet remained operational after the Sentinel Dawn reached firing position. 11 minutes. 9,000 warships had lasted less than 2 hours. The flagship lasted 11 minutes. The difference felt symbolic somehow. The battle ended exactly as it had unfolded. Methodically. The Terrans did not rush. They did not celebrate. They did not pursue fleeing vessels. They simply completed their work. One system at a time. One layer at a time. One target at a time. Until there was nothing left to target. Commander Holt evacuated the bridge 3 minutes before the final impact. Not because he wanted to live. Because Captain Ward had told him to. That realization would haunt him for years. The escape pod launched automatically. Seconds later the Iron Judgment vanished from the tactical display. The flagship's marker dimmed. Then disappeared. Just another point of light gone dark. The final casualty report would eventually record. Dominion fleet vessels deployed, 9,000. Combat effective survivors, 0. Personnel survival pods recovered, 42,317. Commander Holt memorized the number. 42,317. He refused to convert it into percentages. Percentages made people smaller. The pod drifted for 61 hours. Then the Terrans arrived. Not warships. Recovery ships. Large. Practical. Functional. The kind of vessels built for work rather than glory. They collected escape pods one at a time. No speeches. No interrogations. No celebrations. Just rescue operations. The Terrans treated Dominion survivors exactly the same way they treated their own personnel. Professionally. Respectfully. Almost routinely. That disturbed Holt more than anything else. The Dominion fleet had represented the greatest military defeat in regional history. Yet the Terrans behaved as though they were cleaning up after a storm. The recovery vessel entered transit 3 days later. Commander Holt spent most of the journey reviewing battle records. The Terrans had provided them voluntarily. Every sensor log. Every communication transcript. Every engagement record. Nothing hidden. Nothing altered. Everything matched. The losses. The timings. The targeting decisions. The escape pod designations. Every pod carried the same notation. Not a threat. Thousands of entries. Thousands of lives spared. Commander Holt read them repeatedly. Trying to understand. Failing. The answer never changed. The Terrans had not spared survivors because they were weak. They had spared survivors because they chose to. That distinction mattered. The recovery vessel exited transit 4 days later. Commander Holt looked through the observation port. The recovery vessel exited transit 4 days later. Commander Holt looked through the observation port.